The autumn leaves crunched under Jessica Harper's boots as she walked toward Millfield Elementary School, the air crisp with a scent of pine and distant wood smoke. It was a day etched in the memory of every resident of Millfield, a small town nestled in the Pacific Northwest's rolling hills. 25 years ago, on a bright spring morning, an entire fifth-grade class of 28 children, their teacher and their bus driver, boarded a yellow school bus for a field trip to Cascade National Park. They never returned. The disappearance sent shock waves through the community, leaving families shattered and a mystery that lingered like a persistent fog. Jessica, now 37, had been 12 when her younger brother Timmy vanished with his classmates. The years had dulled the sharp edges of her grief, but the ache remained, a constant companion. Every September, she returned to Millfield for the annual memorial service, a ritual of remembrance that kept the hope of answers alive, however faint. Today, the sky was overcast, casting a gray pallor over the schoolyard, mirroring the weight in her chest. Her husband, David, walked beside her, his hand resting lightly on her back. "You okay, Jess?" he asked, his voice soft but steady. She nodded, though her fingers trembled as she adjusted her black scarf. "I have to be," she replied, forcing a small smile. "For Timmy." The schoolyard was filled with familiar faces, parents who had aged under the burden of loss, siblings who had grown up in the shadow of absence, and community members who still whispered about the tragedy. A makeshift stage stood near the flagpole, where the current principal, Miss Anderson, a woman in her 40s who had been a student at the time, prepared to speak. Jessica scanned the crowd, recognizing the hollow eyes of those who shared her pain. Ms. Anderson's voice carried over the murmurs. "Today, we gather to honor the 28 bright souls taken from us too soon. Their laughter once filled these halls, and their memory lives on in our hearts. We stand together, resilient, hoping for answers." Her words were earnest, but to Jessica they felt like echoes of past promises, beautiful but empty. How could they move forward without knowing what happened? After the speeches, the families were invited to view a display of photographs and mementos in the school gymnasium. Jessica wandered through the exhibit, her heart tightening with each step. Framed photos lined the tables, capturing moments of innocence. Timmy with his gap-toothed grin, his friend Alex making bunny ears behind his head, Sarah with her pigtails, Emma clutching her teddy bear. Each image was a stab of memory, a reminder of lives frozen in time. She paused at a large class photo taken just before the trip. The children stood in neat rows in front of the yellow school bus, their light blue plaid uniforms crisp under the spring sun. Mr. Jenkins, their teacher, stood to the left, his smile proud. To the right, the bus driver leaned casually against the bus, his expression relaxed. Jessica's gaze lingered on him. He was in his 30s, with a distinctive scar above his left eyebrow and a snake tattoo peeking out from his rolled-up sleeve. Something stirred in her memory. She leaned closer, her breath catching. That scar, that tattoo. Last week, at Joe's Diner, a local spot she frequented for its strong coffee, a waiter named Frank had served her. He was in his late 50s, with a similar scar above his eyebrow and a faded snake tattoo on his forearm. The resemblance was uncanny. If the bus driver was in his 30s 25 years ago, he'd be about Frank's age now. Could it be the same man? Jessica's heart raced. She had never thought much of Frank before. A friendly face, always ready with a smile and small talk. But now the photo seemed to whisper a possibility she couldn't ignore. She turned to David, who was studying a nearby display. "David, look at this," she said, pointing to the bus driver. "Doesn't he look like Frank from Joe's Diner?" David squinted at the photo, his brow furrowing. "Frank? The waiter? Maybe a little, but it's been 25 years. People change, Jess." "That scar and tattoo, it's too much of a coincidence," she insisted, her voice low but urgent. "I think it's him." David's expression softened with concern. "Even if it is, what does that mean? He was just the bus driver. The police must have questioned him back then." "I don't remember," Jessica admitted, her mind racing. "It's been so long, but maybe he knows something. Maybe there's more to it." David placed a hand on her shoulder. "I know how much you want answers, but be careful. It might just be a coincidence." Jessica nodded, but her resolve was firm. She needed to talk to Frank to see if he was indeed the bus driver from that day. After the memorial, instead of heading home, Jessica drove to Joe's Diner. The lunch crowd had thinned, leaving only a few patrons at the worn wooden tables. Frank was behind the counter, wiping down the surface with a rag, his gray hair catching the fluorescent light. He looked up as she approached, his face breaking into a familiar smile. "Hey, Jessica. Coffee today?" "Actually, Frank, I need to ask you something," she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. Frank raised an eyebrow, still smiling. "Sure, what's on your mind?" "Do you remember the school field trip from Millfield Elementary 25 years ago? The one where the class disappeared?" Frank's smile faltered, a shadow crossing his face. "Yeah, I remember. Terrible thing. Why do you ask?" "Were you the bus driver that day?" Jessica asked, her eyes locked on his. Frank hesitated, his hand pausing on the rag. Then he nodded slowly. "Yes, I was. But I told the police everything I knew. I dropped the kids off at the park, and that was it. Didn't see anything unusual." Jessica studied him, searching for any sign of deceit. "My brother was on that trip, Timmy Harper." Frank's eyes softened. "I'm sorry for your loss. I wish I could tell you more." As Jessica turned to leave, disappointed, Frank spoke again. "Wait, there's something I recall. Might not be important, but there was a man at the park that day hanging around the parking lot. Seemed out of place." Jessica's pulse quickened. "What did he look like?" "Tall, dark hair, beard, red flannel shirt, jeans. Had a tattoo on his neck, but I couldn't make it out," Frank said, rubbing his chin. "Did you tell the police?" she asked. "Yeah, but they never found him. Probably nothing," he replied. "Thank you, Frank," Jessica said, her mind racing. "That could be important." As she left the diner, a spark of hope flickered within her. For the first time in years, there was a lead, however faint. She was determined to find this mysterious man and uncover the truth about her brother's disappearance. Jessica Harper sat on her living room couch, the soft glow of her laptop screen casting shadows across her face. The room was quiet, save for the faint clinking of dishes as David, her husband, cleaned up in the kitchen. She typed Frank Mitchell Millfield into the search bar and hit enter, her heart thudding with anticipation. The results loaded slowly, but they were disappointingly sparse. A few unrelated profiles, a local business listing, nothing about a Frank Mitchell in Millfield. Frowning, she tried variations. Frank Mitchell bus driver, Millfield school trip 1998. Still, nothing substantial. Old articles about the disappearance mentioned the tragedy, but omitted the bus driver's name. In a town as small as Millfield, where everyone knew everyone, the absence of digital footprints felt like a red flag. "David, can you take a look at this?" she called, her voice edged with frustration. David appeared, drying his hands on a dish towel, his brow creased with concern. "What's wrong?" "I can't find anything on Frank Mitchell. No social media, no records, nothing. It's like he doesn't exist," Jessica said, gesturing to the screen. David leaned over, scanning the results. "Maybe he's just private, or he changed his name. People do that sometimes." Jessica's eyes narrowed, her mind racing. Why would he change his name unless he's hiding something? He admitted he was the bus driver that day. If he's Frank Mitchell, there should be something. David sighed, his tone gentle but cautious. "Jess, I know you're desperate for answers, but don't get carried away. It could be a coincidence." "I don't believe in coincidences," she replied, closing the laptop with a soft thud. "I need to talk to someone who was part of the investigation back then. Maybe the police have records." The next morning, Jessica drove through Millfield's quiet streets, the town's familiar charm tinged with melancholy. The police station was a modest brick building, its faded sign reading Millfield Sheriff's Office. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and old paper. The receptionist, a woman in her 50s with wire-rimmed glasses, looked up as Jessica approached. "Hi, I'm Jessica Harper," she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "My brother was Timmy Harper, one of the kids who disappeared 25 years ago. I'd like to speak to someone about the case." The receptionist's face softened with sympathy. "I'm so sorry, dear. Let me see if Sheriff Davis is free." Minutes later, Sheriff Tom Davis emerged from his office. He was a broad-shouldered man in his 50s, with a kind face and a firm handshake. "Mrs. Harper, I heard about your visit to the memorial. What can I do for you?" Jessica explained her discovery about Frank Mitchell and her fruitless online search. "I was hoping you might have records from the original investigation or know someone who worked on it. I need to understand what happened." Davis nodded, his expression thoughtful. "That case is still open, though it's been cold for years. Detective John Harris led the investigation back then. He retired about a decade ago, but he's still in Millfield. I can give you his contact info, but please go easy on him. That case hit him hard." "I will," Jessica promised, taking the slip of paper with Harris's number. "Thank you, Sheriff." Back in her car, Jessica dialed the number, her fingers trembling slightly. After a few rings, a gruff voice answered. "Hello?" "Detective Harris, this is Jessica Harper. My brother was Timmy Harper, one of the children who disappeared in 1998. I was hoping we could talk about the case." A pause hung heavy on the line. "I remember Timmy," Harris said finally. "Bright kid, always smiling. What do you want to know?" "I found something in an old photo from the trip," Jessica said. "Can we meet?" Another pause, then a sigh. "All right, my place tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., 345 Oak Street." "Thank you," Jessica said, relief washing over her. The next morning, Jessica drove to Oak Street, a quiet lane lined with modest homes and manicured lawns. Number 345 was a cozy bungalow, its front garden blooming with roses and lavender. She knocked, and the door opened to reveal John Harris, a man in his early 70s with silver hair and sharp blue eyes that seemed to see through her. "Mrs. Harper," he said, extending a weathered hand. "Come in." They settled in his living room, where sunlight streamed through a large window, illuminating family photos and faded police commendations on the walls. A coffee table held a mug and a stack of gardening magazines. Harris leaned back in an old armchair, his expression guarded but curious. "So, what's this about a photo?" he asked, his voice rough but not unkind. Jessica pulled the class photo from her bag, pointing to the bus driver. "I recognize this man, Frank Mitchell. He works at Joe's Diner now. When I asked him about the trip, he admitted he was the driver, but said he didn't know anything beyond dropping off the kids. But I can't find any records of him online." Harris's eyes narrowed as he studied the photo. "Frank Mitchell. Yeah, we questioned him back then. He had an alibi. Witnesses saw him at a gas station on Route 12 about an hour after he dropped the kids at Cascade National Park. His story checked out, but what?" Jessica pressed, leaning forward. Harris rubbed his chin, his gaze distant. "There was always something off about him. He was too calm, too rehearsed, but we had no evidence to hold him." Jessica's pulse quickened. "He mentioned a man at the park that day, tall, dark hair, beard, red flannel shirt, tattoo on his neck. He said he told the police, but nothing came of it." Harris's expression darkened. "I remember that. We tried to track the guy down, but he was a ghost. No name, no record. There was a witness, though, Mrs. Evelyn Carter. She lived near the park entrance back then and saw Frank talking to a man matching that description before the bus left. She said they seemed to know each other." "Is she still in Millfield?" Jessica asked, her voice urgent. "Yeah, she's in her 80s now, but her mind's sharp. Lives at 112 Maple Lane. You might want to talk to her, but be gentle. She's an old lady." Jessica took the address, her hands trembling with excitement. "Thank you, Detective. This could be a lead." As she left Harris's house, Jessica's mind raced. Mrs. Carter might hold the key to unraveling the mystery of Timmy's disappearance. She was determined to find her and learn what she saw that day. Jessica Harper parked her car in front of 112 Maple Lane, a charming Victorian house with a wraparound porch adorned with hanging flower baskets and a garden bursting with roses and lavender. The late afternoon sun bathed the scene in a golden hue, casting long shadows across the cobblestone path. The air carried the faint scent of blooming flowers, but Jessica's mind was too preoccupied to notice the beauty. Her heart thudded with anticipation as she walked up the path, her boots clicking softly against the stones. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the conversation ahead, and knocked on the heavy oak door. After a moment, the door creaked open, revealing Mrs. Evelyn Carter, an elderly woman in her early 80s, with silver hair neatly pinned back and sharp blue eyes that seemed to pierce through time. She wore a floral dress with a knitted cardigan, exuding quiet strength despite her frail frame. Her hands, slightly trembling, held the door as she studied Jessica. "Mrs. Carter? I'm Jessica Harper. Detective Harris suggested I speak with you about the school trip from 25 years ago," Jessica said, her voice steady, despite the knot in her stomach. "Ah, yes. John called to let me know you might come by," Mrs. Carter replied, her tone warm but cautious. "Please come in, dear." Jessica followed her into a cozy living room filled with antique furniture, a polished mahogany table, a velvet-upholstered sofa, and walls adorned with framed family photos and watercolor paintings of the Pacific Northwest. A tea set sat on a low table, steam rising from a porcelain teapot. The air smelled faintly of chamomile and old books, creating a nostalgic, comforting atmosphere. "Would you like some tea?" Mrs. Carter asked, gesturing to a cushioned chair. "Yes, thank you," Jessica replied, settling into the seat. The warmth of the teacup seeped into her hands as she took a sip, the chamomile soothing her nerves. As they sat, Jessica explained her purpose. "I'm trying to find out what happened to my brother Timmy and his classmates. Detective Harris said you saw something that day. Frank Mitchell talking to a man at Cascade National Park." Mrs. Carter's expression grew somber, her blue eyes clouding with memory. "Yes, I remember it, like it was yesterday. It was a beautiful spring morning. The kind that makes you glad to be alive. I was out for my daily walk near the park entrance when I saw the yellow school bus parked in the lot. Frank was there, talking to a man I didn't recognize." Jessica leaned forward, her pulse quickening. "Can you describe the man?" "He was tall, about 6 feet, with dark hair and a thick beard. He wore a red flannel shirt, faded jeans, and work boots. What stood out was the tattoo on his neck, a coiled snake, its scales detailed and menacing. It gave me chills." "Did you hear what they were saying?" Jessica asked, her voice urgent. "Not clearly. They were speaking in low voices, almost whispering. But I saw Frank hand him something, a small package or envelope, I couldn't tell. Then the man got into a black van and drove off." "A black van?" Jessica's heart raced. "Did you see the license plate?" Mrs. Carter nodded, her lips pursing. "I did. I've always been a bit nosy, jotting down things that seem out of place. Let me see if I still have it." She rose slowly, her cardigan slipping slightly as she moved to a corner desk cluttered with papers and trinkets. After rummaging through a drawer, she returned with a worn leather notebook, its pages yellowed with age. "Here it is," she said, opening to a page with neat handwriting. The license plate was Oregon 567 ABC. I wrote it down because it was odd for someone from out of state to be there so early before the park opened. Jessica's breath caught. "Do you remember anything else about the man or the van?" "The van had tinted windows, and there was a logo on the side. Something like Northwest Deliveries or Northwest Express, but it was partially covered with dirt, so I'm not certain. It looked suspicious, like they didn't want to be noticed." "Did you tell the police about this?" Jessica asked. "Yes, I did," Mrs. Carter said, her voice tinged with frustration. "But they couldn't find any record of the van or the man. It was like he vanished, just like those poor children. My granddaughter was in 4th grade at the time, just a year below. The whole town felt the loss." Jessica nodded, her throat tightening at the shared grief. "That's why I need to find out what happened. Did Frank seem nervous, or was there any tension between them?" Mrs. Carter thought for a moment, her fingers tracing the edge of her teacup. "Frank looked uneasy. He kept glancing around as if making sure no one was watching. When he saw me walking by, he quickly ended the conversation and climbed back onto the bus. It felt secretive. That's important, Jessica said, her mind racing. It sounds like he didn't want to be seen with that man. Exactly, Mrs. Carter agreed. I always thought there was more to it, but the police didn't pursue it much. They were so focused on searching the park. Jessica thanked Mrs. Carter, promising to keep her updated. As she stepped outside, the golden light had faded to a soft twilight, the air cooler now. Her mind buzzed with possibilities. The license plate, the snake tattoo, the name Ray, these were solid leads, but they felt like pieces of a puzzle still missing its edges. On impulse, she drove to her parents' house, where Timmy's room remained a preserved shrine to his memory. Her parents were away on vacation, leaving the house quiet as she let herself in. She climbed the stairs, her footsteps echoing, and pushed open the door to Timmy's room. The air was heavy with dust, the room frozen in time. Posters of '90s bands like Nirvana and Backstreet Boys on the walls, a collection of baseball cards neatly arranged on the dresser, and a worn teddy bear sitting on the bed, its fur faded but soft. Jessica sat on the bed, picking up the teddy bear and holding it close. Memories flooded back. Timmy's gap-toothed grin as they played catch in the backyard, his excited chatter about a science project on volcanoes, the way he'd sneak into her room to share stories about his friends. She ran her fingers over his baseball glove still on his desk and pictured the summer days they spent tossing a ball, Timmy's determination to catch it every time. "One day, I'll be a pro," he'd say, his eyes shining with dreams. Tears welled up as she whispered, "I'm going to find out what happened to you, Timmy, I promise." She stayed there, letting herself grieve, the teddy bear warm against her chest. The visit grounded her, strengthening her resolve to follow the lead Mrs. Carter had given her. Back home, Jessica sat at her computer, the glow of the screen illuminating her determined face. She typed Northwest Express, Oregon, 1998 into the search bar, hoping to uncover something about the van. The results were sparse, but she found a mention of a defunct delivery company called Northwest Express that operated in the late 90s before going bankrupt in 2001. The company had been based in Portland, Oregon, specializing in freight delivery, but the trail went cold. No website, no contact details, just a brief mention in an old business directory. Frustrated but undeterred, Jessica decided to call Detective Harris again. "Detective, it's Jessica Harper. I spoke with Mrs. Carter, and she mentioned a black van with an Oregon license plate 5067 ABC, possibly from a company called Northwest Express. Can you access any old case files or records to find out more?" Harris's voice was heavy with regret. "That case haunted me for years. We did everything we could, but it was like they vanished into thin air. I'll check the archives, but it's been a long time. I might be able to pull some strings. Give me a day or two." "Thank you," Jessica said, her voice firm. "I appreciate it." As she hung up, a mix of hope and impatience settled in her chest. Waiting was hard, but she had to trust Harris would come through. In the meantime, she considered returning to Joe's diner to observe Frank, but she knew she had to be careful not to tip him off. For now, she would wait, her mind racing with the possibility that Ray in the van held the key to unlocking the mystery of Timmy's disappearance. Jessica Harper's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, jolting her from her thoughts. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting slatted shadows across the room where the scent of coffee lingered. She glanced at the screen. Detective John Harris. Her heart skipped a beat as she answered. "Jessica, I've got something." Harris's gruff voice came through. I dug into the archives and found records on Northwest Express. It was a front for a trafficking ring in the late 90s, operating across Oregon and Washington. The van Mrs. Carter saw, Oregon plate 567 ABC, was registered to a Raymond Holt, a known associate of the ring. "Can you come to the station today?" "I'll be there in an hour," Jessica replied, her voice tight with anticipation. She grabbed her keys, her mind racing with the implications. A trafficking ring. The words felt heavy, sinister, a dark cloud over the mystery of Timmy's disappearance. The Millfield Sheriff's Office was quiet when Jessica arrived, the hum of fluorescent lights and the faint clack of keyboards filling the air. Harris met her in a small conference room, its walls lined with maps and faded case files. A manila folder lay on the table, its edges worn from years of storage. Harris opened it, revealing grainy photos and typed reports. "This is Raymond Holt," he said, sliding a photo toward her. The man was tall, with dark hair, a thick beard, and a coiled snake tattoo on his neck, just as Mrs. Carter described. His eyes were cold, his expression unreadable. He was arrested in 2000 for smuggling, but released on a technicality. After that, he vanished. The feds suspected he was moving people, kids mostly, across state lines, possibly into Canada. Jessica's stomach churned as she studied the photo. And the van. Registered to Northwest Express, a shell company. The logo, Mrs. Carter mentioned matches their old branding. We never connected it to the school trip because Holt was a ghost by the time we investigated. But Frank Mitchell's involvement, that's new. Jessica's fingers tightened around the class photo in her bag. Frank said he saw a man like this at the park. If he was working with Holt, he lied about more than his identity. Harris nodded, his jaw tight. We questioned Frank back then, but his alibi was solid. Witnesses placed him at a gas station an hour after the drop-off. Still, if he was meeting Holt before the trip, that changes things. I'm requesting more files from the state archives, but it'll take time. "Thank you, Detective," Jessica said, her voice firm despite the turmoil within. "I need to know if Timmy—" She trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Harris's eyes softened. "I know. I'll keep digging." As Jessica left the station, the weight of the new information pressed on her chest. A trafficking ring. The idea that Timmy and his classmates might have been taken, not lost, was both horrifying and strangely hopeful. If they were trafficked, some might still be alive. Needing to share the burden, Jessica drove to the Rusty Spoon, a cozy cafe where she often met her friend Sarah, whose cousin Emma was among the missing. The cafe buzzed with the lunchtime crowd, the air filled with the aroma of fresh pastries and espresso. Sarah, a petite woman with curly brown hair and kind eyes, waved from a corner booth. "Jess, you look like you've seen a ghost," Sarah said as Jessica slid into the seat across from her. "I might have," Jessica replied, her voice low. She recounted her findings, Frank's suspicious lack of records, Mrs. Carter's story about Ray, and Harris's revelation about the trafficking ring. Sarah's face paled, her coffee cup trembling in her hands. Emma. She was so bright, always drawing. If she was taken. Sarah's voice cracked. There were rumors, you know. A few years ago, someone in Seattle claimed they saw a young woman who looked like Emma, but the police dismissed it. No evidence. Jessica's heart leaped. Seattle? That's not far. Did they say anything else? Just that she was working at a shelter, maybe homeless. I wanted to believe it, but it hurt too much to hope. Sarah's eyes welled with tears. Do you think Timmy could still be out there? I don't know, Jessica admitted, her throat tight. But if there's even a chance, I have to find out. They sat in silence, the weight of their shared grief heavy between them. Jessica sipped her coffee, her mind racing. The rumors about Emma suggested survivors, but the trafficking ring meant danger. Confronting Frank directly could tip him off, but waiting for Harris's files felt too slow. As she drove home, Jessica's thoughts churned. She pictured Timmy's face, his laughter echoing from their childhood, the memory of their last day together, Timmy waving from the school bus, his backpack bouncing, cut like a knife. She couldn't sit still. Frank was the key, and she needed to know what he was hiding. That evening, Jessica sat in her car across from Joe's diner, the neon sign casting a red glow over the parking lot. Frank's shift would end soon. She'd decided to follow him, to see where he went, who he met. It was risky. David would call it reckless. But she couldn't shake the feeling that Frank held answers. If he was connected to Holt and the trafficking ring, his movements might lead her to the truth. Her phone buzzed, a text from David. Home soon? Worried about you. She typed a quick reply. Soon. Just checking something. Love you. She didn't mention tailing Frank. She knew he'd try to stop her. As the clock ticked toward 8 p.m., Frank emerged from the diner, his apron off, a cigarette dangling from his lips. He climbed into an old pickup truck, its paint chipped and rusted. Jessica's heart pounded as she started her engine, keeping her distance as he pulled onto the road. The streets of Millfield were quiet, the night air cool and damp with the promise of rain. Frank's truck headed toward the outskirts of town, toward a wooded area near Route 12. Jessica followed, her headlights off to avoid detection, her hands gripping the wheel. The road narrowed, lined with towering pines that blocked the moonlight. Where was he going? And would it lead her to Timmy or to danger? Jessica Harper's car crept along the dark, winding road, her headlights off to avoid detection as she followed Frank Mitchell's pickup truck. The dense pines of Cascade National Park loomed on either side, their branches swallowing the moonlight. Her heart pounded, her hands gripping the steering wheel as she kept a safe distance. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and pine, and a light mist began to settle, blurring the edges of the road. Frank's truck slowed, turning onto a narrow dirt path that led deeper into the forest. Jessica hesitated, her breath shallow, then followed, her tires crunching softly on gravel. The path ended at a clearing where a dilapidated cabin stood, its weathered wood barely visible in the dim light. Frank's truck parked beside a black van, its faded Northwest Express logo matching Mrs. Carter's description. Jessica's pulse raced. This was the van tied to Raymond Holt and the trafficking ring. She parked behind a cluster of trees, her car hidden in the shadows, and slipped out, her sneakers silent on the forest floor. Crouching low, Jessica approached the cabin, her heart hammering. Through a grimy window, she saw flickering light from a lantern inside. Voices carried, Frank's tense and low, and another, deeper and commanding. She edged closer, peering through a crack in the curtains. Inside, Frank stood opposite a tall man with a dark beard and a coiled snake tattoo on his neck. Raymond Holt. A small table held a map and a stack of papers, and in the corner a locked door led to another room. Holt's voice was sharp. "We need to move the assets tonight? The feds are sniffing around again?" Frank shook his head, his face pale. "It's too risky. That woman, Jessica Harper, she's asking questions. She recognized me." Holt's eyes narrowed. "You were supposed to stay clean. If she's on to us, we eliminate the problem." Jessica's blood ran cold. She had to know what, or who, was behind that locked door. Moving silently, she circled to the back of the cabin, finding a loose board near a basement window. With trembling hands, she pried it open and slipped inside, landing in a damp, musty cellar. The air was heavy with the smell of mildew and something sharper. Fear. A faint whimper came from above. Creeping up a creaky staircase, Jessica reached the locked door. She pressed her ear against it, hearing soft sobs and muffled voices. Her heart leapt. Survivors. She fumbled with the lock, her fingers shaking, until it clicked open. Inside, 4 people huddled in the dim light, 3 men and a woman, all in their 30s, their faces gaunt and eyes hollow. One man, with familiar green eyes and a scar on his cheek, stared at her in disbelief. "Timmy," Jessica whispered, her voice breaking. It was her brother, older, broken, but alive. "Jess?" he croaked, his voice hoarse. "How?" Before she could answer, the door to the main room burst open, and Holt stormed in, a gun in his hand. "Who the hell are you?" he growled, his eyes locking onto Jessica. She froze, her mind racing. "Jessica Harper," she said, her voice steady despite the fear. "Timmy's sister. I know about the trafficking ring, Holt. It's over." Holt's face twisted with rage. "You're making a big mistake." He raised the gun, but Frank grabbed his arm, shouting, "No, Ray, she's not worth it." The distraction gave Jessica a moment to act. She lunged for a metal chair, swinging it at Holt's legs. He stumbled, the gun clattering to the floor. Timmy and another survivor, a woman with matted hair, scrambled to help, pinning Holt down. Frank bolted for the door, but the sound of sirens pierced the night air, growing louder. Jessica's phone had been on, her call to Detective Harris open the entire time. She'd dialed him before entering the cabin, a precaution she now thanked herself for. Within moments, police cars flooded the clearing, their red and blue lights cutting through the mist. Detective Harris burst in, gun drawn, followed by Sheriff Davis and a team of officers. "Raymond Holt, you're under arrest," Harris barked, cuffing Holt as officers secured Frank, who'd been caught trying to flee in his truck. The survivors were gently led out, wrapped in blankets, their faces a mix of relief and fear. Jessica knelt beside Timmy, tears streaming down her face as she took his hand. His skin was cold, his eyes haunted, but he managed a weak smile. "You found me," he whispered. "I never stopped looking," Jessica replied, her voice choked with emotion. She pulled him into a hug, his frail frame trembling against her. The other survivors, Emma, Sarah's cousin among them, watched silently, their own stories of survival unspoken but heavy in the air. As the police escorted Holt and Frank to squad cars, Harris approached Jessica. You were reckless, but you did it. We've got enough to dismantle what's left of their operation. Timmy and the others will need time, Jessica. They've been through hell." Jessica nodded, her eyes fixed on Timmy as paramedics checked him. "What happened to them?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Harris's face was grim. "From what we've gathered, Holt's ring trafficked the kids across the border. Some were sold into labor, others, worse. These 4 escaped years ago, but were recaptured. We'll get the full story at the station." Jessica's heart ached as she looked at Timmy, his once bright eyes dulled by years of trauma. The reunion she'd dreamed of was here, but it wasn't the joyful moment she'd imagined. Still, he was alive, and that was enough for now. As the police led the survivors to ambulances, Jessica stayed by Timmy's side, her hand in his. The mist had thickened into a light rain, pattering against the cabin's roof, mirroring the storm of emotions within her. She had found her brother, but the truth was darker than she'd ever imagined. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled the air at Millfield General Hospital, where Jessica Harper sat beside her brother Timmy's bed. The room was small, its pale blue walls and fluorescent lights stark against the soft beeping of a heart monitor. Timmy, now in his mid-30s, lay propped against pillows, his green eyes distant, his face etched with lines that spoke of years stolen. His hands, calloused and scarred, rested limply on the hospital blanket. Jessica held one, her thumb tracing the familiar shape of his knuckles, searching for the boy she once knew. "Timmy," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "I'm here. You're safe now." He turned his head slowly, his gaze meeting hers. "Jess," he murmured, his voice raspy from disuse, I thought I'd never see you again." Tears welled in Jessica's eyes as she squeezed his hand. "I never stopped looking. I promised I'd find you." Timmy's lips twitched, a ghost of a smile, but his eyes remained haunted. "They took us across the border, worked us in factories, then other places. I tried to escape, but they always found me." Jessica's heart shattered at his words. She wanted to ask more, where he'd been, what he'd endured, but the fragility in his expression stopped her. Instead, she brushed a strand of hair from his forehead, the gesture tender, like when he was a boy. "You're home now," she said softly. "We'll figure it out together." The door opened, and Detective John Harris stepped in, his silver hair catching the light. His face was weary, but carried a hint of triumph. "Jessica, I've got news," he said, pulling a chair beside her. "Frank Mitchell's talking. He's given us names, locations, everything. We've made arrests in Portland, Seattle, and across the border in Vancouver. The trafficking ring's crumbling." Jessica exhaled, relief mingling with rage. "What did Frank say about the kids?" Harris's jaw tightened. "He was a low-level player, driving the bus to hand the kids to Holt's crew. Holt ran the operation, using Northwest Express as a front. They targeted small towns, places where disappearances could be blamed on accidents. Most of the kids were trafficked into labor or worse. Frank claims he didn't know the full extent, but he's facing charges." "And Holt?" Jessica asked, her voice sharp. "Raymond Holt's in custody. He's not talking yet, but we've got enough evidence. Documents, witness statements, the van, it's over." Jessica nodded, her mind reeling. The truth was a heavy weight, but it brought a strange clarity. She looked at Timmy, who stared at the ceiling, lost in his thoughts. "What about the others?" she asked. "Emma? The others in the cabin?" "They're here, under care," Harris said. "Physically, they'll recover, but mentally, it'll take time. We're contacting families, but some, like Emma, have no one left." Jessica's thoughts turned to Sarah, her friend whose cousin Emma was among the survivors. She excused herself and found Sarah in the hospital waiting area, her curly hair disheveled, her eyes red from crying. They hugged tightly, no words needed. "I saw Emma," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "She's so thin, so quiet, but she remembered me." Jessica nodded, her throat tight. "Let's go see her together." They found Emma in a nearby room, sitting by a window, her matted hair now clean, but her eyes still wary. She was in her 30s, like Timmy, but her delicate features hinted at the girl from the class photo. A therapy dog, a golden retriever named Luna, lay at her feet, her soft fur a quiet comfort. The hospital had brought Luna in to help the survivors, and her presence seemed to ease the tension in the room. "Emma, it's Sarah," Sarah said softly, kneeling beside her. "And this is Jessica, Timmy's sister." Emma's gaze flickered to Jessica, then back to Luna, whom she stroked gently. "Timmy's here?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Yes," Jessica said, sitting across from her. "He's safe now, thanks to you all holding on." Emma's lips trembled. "We were in a warehouse first, then moved around. Some of us got away, but they found us again. I thought we'd never get out." Jessica reached out, touching Emma's hand. "You're out now. We're going to help you. All of you." Luna nuzzled Emma's leg, and a small smile broke through her guarded expression. Inspired, Jessica returned to Timmy's room, where a nurse had brought Luna to visit. The dog hopped onto the bed, her tail wagging, and Timmy's face softened as he petted her. "Good girl," he murmured, the first sign of warmth Jessica had seen. "Luna's here to help," the nurse said, smiling. "She's trained to comfort trauma patients." Jessica watched as Timmy leaned into Luna, his shoulders relaxing. The sight stirred memories of their childhood dog, Rusty, who Timmy loved to chase in the backyard. Maybe Luna could be a bridge to healing, a small light in the darkness. That evening, Jessica sat in the hospital cafeteria with Sarah, sipping weak coffee as they processed the day. "It's not what I imagined," Jessica admitted. "Finding Timmy, he's here, but he's not the same. None of them are." Sarah nodded, her eyes distant. "Emma's different, too. But they're alive, Jess. That's more than we had yesterday." Jessica stared into her cup, her thoughts a tangle of hope and guilt. She'd found Timmy, but the years lost weighed heavily. Had she done enough? Could she have found him sooner? The questions gnawed at her, but Luna's gentle presence and Timmy's faint smile gave her purpose. She would be there for him, for Emma, for all of them, no matter how long it took. As she returned to Timmy's room, she found him asleep, Luna curled at his side. The sight was a fragile promise of healing. Jessica sat beside him, her hand resting on his, and whispered, "We're going to be okay, Timmy. I'm not giving up on you." Jessica Harper's home was a modest craftsman-style house on the edge of Millfield, its front porch adorned with hanging ferns and a weathered swing. Inside, the living room glowed with the warmth of a crackling fireplace, the scent of cedar mingling with the faint aroma of fresh coffee. Timmy sat on the couch, his thin frame dwarfed by an oversized sweater Jessica had given him. Luna, the golden retriever therapy dog, lay at his feet, her head resting on his knee. It had been a week since the rescue, and Timmy's release from the hospital marked a new chapter. But his silence weighed heavily on Jessica. She sat across from him, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. "Timmy, do you want to talk about anything today?" she asked gently, her voice soft but hopeful. He stared at the fire, his fingers absently stroking Luna's fur. "It's hard," he said finally, his voice low. "Everything feels unreal, like I'm still there, waiting for them to come back." Jessica's heart ached. She wanted to pull him close, to erase the years of pain, but she knew healing couldn't be rushed. "You don't have to go through it alone," she said. "Luna's here, I'm here, and we're going to find people to help." Timmy's eyes flicked to Luna, and a faint smile crossed his lips. "She's nice. Reminds me of Rusty." The mention of their childhood dog brought a lump to Jessica's throat, a fleeting connection to the past. The next day, Jessica drove Timmy to the Millfield Community Center, a low brick building with colorful murals of children playing. She and Sarah had organized a support group for the survivors and their families, a place to share stories and rebuild. The meeting room was warm, with folding chairs arranged in a circle and a table of pastries and coffee. Sarah greeted them, her smile bright but tinged with fatigue. Emma sat quietly in a corner, her hands clasped tightly, while two other survivors, Michael and Lisa, chatted softly with their families. Jessica stood at the center of the circle, her voice steady despite her nerves. "Thank you all for coming. We've all lost something. Time, loved ones, trust. But we're here to support each other, to find a way forward together." Emma spoke first, her voice trembling but clear. "I was 12 when they took us. We were moved so many times, warehouses, basements. I kept hoping someone would find us. Seeing you all now, it's overwhelming, but it helps." Timmy shifted in his seat, Luna nudging his hand. "I don't remember much," he said, his voice barely audible. "Just fear, and trying to protect Emma when I could." Sarah reached for Emma's hand, tears in her eyes. "You're so strong, both of you. We're here now." The group shared stories, some halting, some tearful, but each word built a fragile bridge between them. Jessica watched Timmy, noticing how Luna's presence calmed him, her gentle nudges coaxing him to stay present. The dog's warmth seemed to anchor the room, a silent ally in their healing. Later that week, Jessica met Detective Harris at a local diner, its chrome stools and checkered floor a stark contrast to the heavy topic. Harris sipped his coffee, his face lined with exhaustion. "We've tracked down more of Holt's network," he said. "Frank's testimony gave us leads to safe houses in 3 states. We've rescued 6 more victims so far, and more arrests are coming." Jessica's grip tightened on her cup. "Will they face justice? Holt, Frank, all of them?" "Holt's looking at life without parole," Harris said. "Frank's cooperating so he might get a deal. But he's not walking free. The feds are involved now. It's bigger than we thought." Jessica nodded, a mix of relief and anger swirling within her. "What about the other kids from the class? Any chance of finding more?" Harris sighed. "We're trying. Some may have been lost, but we're following every lead. Your persistence made this possible, Jessica. Don't forget that." Back home, Jessica felt the weight of his words. She'd found Timmy, but the loss of the others haunted her. Determined to do more, she attended a town hall meeting at Millfield City Hall, a grand old building with high ceilings and stained glass windows. The room buzzed with community members, their faces a mix of hope and grief. Jessica took the podium, her hands trembling, but her voice firm. "My brother Timmy was one of the 28 kids who vanished 25 years ago," she began. "We found him, and 3 others, but so many are still missing. We need better systems, faster responses, more resources for cold cases. No family should wait decades for answers." The crowd applauded, and several parents approached her afterward, sharing their own stories of loss. Jessica felt a spark of purpose ignite. She wasn't just Timmy's sister anymore. She was a voice for the missing, a beacon for those still searching. That evening, Jessica and Timmy sat on the porch swing. Luna sprawled between them. The night was crisp, stars piercing the dark sky. Timmy held a photo of their childhood family, his fingers tracing their parents' faces. "I missed this," he said softly. "You, Mom, Dad, home." Jessica's eyes welled up. "We missed you too. We'll get through this, Timmy. Together." He leaned his head against her shoulder, Luna's warmth binding them. For the first time in weeks, Jessica felt a flicker of hope, a belief that they could rebuild, not just for themselves, but for all who had been touched by the tragedy. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of Dr. Elena Ruiz's office, a cozy space with soft beige walls, a plush rug, and shelves lined with books on psychology. Timmy Harper sat in an armchair, his hands fidgeting in his lap, while Luna, the golden retriever therapy dog, lay at his feet, her warm presence a quiet anchor. Dr. Ruiz, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a calm demeanor, leaned forward, her notebook resting on her knee. "Timmy, we can go at your pace," she said gently. "Maybe start with something small, a memory that feels safe." Timmy's gaze drifted to Luna, his fingers brushing her fur. "There was a park," he said slowly, his voice rough, "near our house. Jess and I used to play catch there. I was happy then." Jessica, sitting in a corner chair as an observer, felt her throat tighten. The memory of their backyard games, Timmy's laughter as he caught her wild throws, was vivid, a lifeline to the brother she'd lost and found. She nodded encouragingly, and Luna nudged Timmy's hand, coaxing a faint smile. "That's a great start," Dr. Ruiz said. "Let's hold on to that memory. It's a piece of you that's still there." Outside, the crisp October air carried the scent of fallen leaves as Jessica drove Timmy home. He was quiet, but the session had been a step forward, the first time he'd spoken of the past without retreating into silence. At home, Luna bounded onto the couch beside him, and Jessica noticed him relax, his shoulders less tense. "You did good today," she said, handing him a mug of hot cocoa. "Thanks," Timmy murmured, his eyes on Luna. "It's hard, but she helps." The next day, Jessica and Sarah hosted another support group meeting at the Millfield Community Center. The room buzzed with quiet energy as survivors and families gathered, the air filled with the aroma of fresh coffee and homemade cookies. Emma, looking slightly stronger, shared that she'd started sketching again, a hobby from her childhood. Michael, another survivor, spoke of enrolling in a carpentry course, his voice tentative but hopeful. Lisa, the fourth survivor, described her first night without nightmares, a small victory that drew nods of understanding. Sarah squeezed Jessica's hand. "This is working, Jess. They're starting to heal." Jessica nodded, her heart swelling. "It's slow, but it's something. We're building a family here." Inspired by the group's progress, Jessica pursued her advocacy with renewed vigor. She'd been invited to meet State Senator Clara Nguyen, who was visiting Millfield to discuss community safety. The meeting took place at a local library, its oak tables and towering bookshelves creating a warm, intellectual atmosphere. Senator Nguyen, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, listened intently as Jessica outlined her proposal. "We need more funding for cold case investigations," Jessica said, her voice steady. "Families in Millfield waited 25 years for answers. Better resources, databases, task forces could prevent that. I'm starting a petition to create a state fund for missing children's cases." Nguyen nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Your story's powerful, Jessica. I'll take this to the state committee. If you can get community support, it'll strengthen the case." Jessica left the meeting energized, her mind buzzing with plans. She shared the petition at the support group, and families eagerly signed, their signatures a testament to shared pain and hope. Sarah helped spread the word, posting flyers around town, and soon local businesses displayed them in their windows. That evening, Millfield held a vigil at the town square, a grassy area framed by old oaks and a stone fountain. Hundreds gathered, holding candles that flickered in the cool night air, casting a warm glow over faces marked by grief and resilience. Jessica stood beside Timmy, Luna at their side, as the crowd honored the children still missing from the 1998 disappearance. Ms. Anderson, the school principal, spoke first. "We remember the 28 souls taken from us, and we celebrate the 4 who've returned. Their strength inspires us to keep searching." Jessica felt Timmy tense beside her. She squeezed his hand, whispering, "You don't have to speak." But to her surprise, he stepped forward, his voice shaky but clear. "I'm Timmy Harper," he said, the crowd quieting. "I was one of those kids. I'm still figuring out how to be here again, but thank you for not forgetting us." The applause was soft but heartfelt, and Jessica's eyes filled with tears. As they stepped back, Timmy turned to her, his voice low. "Remember that time I hit the ball over the fence? You climbed it to get it back, even though Dad said not to." Jessica laughed through her tears, the memory vivid, her scuffed knees, Timmy's triumphant grin. "You owed me ice cream for that," she said, nudging him. He smiled, a real one this time, and Luna wagged her tail, sensing the shift. The moment felt like a small victory, a crack in the wall of trauma that separated them. Jessica wrapped her arm around Timmy, the candlelight reflecting in her eyes. She'd found her brother, and now she was finding her purpose, not just for him, but for every family still waiting for answers. The therapist's office was a haven of calm, with sunlight streaming through a large window, casting golden patterns on the hardwood floor. Timmy Harper sat across from Dr. Elena Ruiz, his posture less rigid than in previous sessions. Luna, the golden retriever therapy dog, sprawled beside him, her soft snores a gentle rhythm in the quiet room. Jessica sat in her usual corner, her heart lifting as she watched Timmy's hands, once clenched, now resting lightly on Luna's fur. "Timmy, last time you mentioned the park," Dr. Ruiz said, her voice warm. "Is there another memory that feels safe to share?" Timmy's gaze drifted to the window where autumn leaves danced in the breeze. "There was a camping trip," he said slowly. "Me, Jess, Mom, and Dad. We went to Lake Crescent. I caught my first fish, and Jess teased me because it was so small. We laughed all night by the campfire." Jessica's breath caught, the memory flooding back. The crackle of the fire, Timmy's proud grin as he held up his tiny fish, their parents' laughter echoing under the stars. She smiled, her eyes misty, and nodded for him to continue. "That's a beautiful memory," Dr. Ruiz said. "How does it feel to share it?" "Like, I'm still that kid a little," Timmy said, his voice stronger. "With Jess there, it feels real again." Jessica's heart swelled. Each memory Timmy shared was a thread, weaving them back together, mending the years torn apart. Luna nudged his hand, and he scratched her ears, a small smile breaking through. Later that week, Jessica and Sarah hosted a support group meeting at the Millfield Community Center, its walls now adorned with artwork from the survivors. Emma had started an art workshop, her sketches of landscapes and faces a quiet reclaiming of her creativity. The room buzzed with warmth, the scent of fresh pastries mingling with the chatter of survivors and families. Michael shared that he'd built his first chair in his carpentry course, while Lisa spoke of joining a book club, her voice steadier. Emma stood, holding a sketch of a sunflower. "I drew this for the group," she said, her eyes bright. "It's about growing, even after everything." Jessica clapped, her chest tight with pride. "Emma, that's amazing. You're inspiring us all." Sarah leaned over, whispering, "She's coming back to herself. They all are." The group's growth fueled Jessica's advocacy. Her petition for cold case funding had gained traction, with over 1,000 signatures from Millfield and neighboring towns. Senator Clara Nguyen invited Jessica to a community event at the town hall to announce a state grant for missing children's investigations. The hall was packed, its stained glass windows glowing in the evening light. Nguyen took the stage, her voice clear and commanding. "Thanks to Jessica Harper's tireless work," Nguyen said, "Oregon is allocating $2 million to a cold case task force, starting with cases like Millfield's. Her advocacy shows what one voice can do." The crowd erupted in applause, and Jessica felt a rush of purpose. She glanced at Sarah, who squeezed her hand, and at Timmy, who stood quietly with Luna, his presence a quiet victory. After the event, families approached Jessica, sharing stories of their own lost loved ones, their gratitude strengthening her resolve. On a crisp Saturday morning, Jessica took Timmy and Luna to their childhood park, a sprawling green space with oak trees and a winding creek. The air smelled of damp grass and pine, and children's laughter echoed from a nearby playground. Timmy walked slowly, his eyes scanning the familiar paths. Luna trotted beside him, her tail wagging as she sniffed the ground. "Remember the rope swing?" Jessica asked, pointing to a tree by the creek. "You'd swing so high I thought you'd fly into the sky." Timmy chuckled, a rare sound. "You dared me to jump into the creek once. I was soaked, and Mom was so mad." They laughed, the memory a bridge to their past. Jessica watched Timmy toss a stick for Luna, his movements tentative but lighter. The park felt like a sanctuary, a place where they could reclaim pieces of who they'd been. As they sat on a bench, Jessica broached an idea. I've been thinking about a memorial garden at the school for the kids still missing and for all of you who came back. A place to remember and heal." Timmy's eyes softened. "I like that. Maybe I could help plant it. I used to like gardening with Dad." Jessica's heart leapt. "We'll do it together. For them. For us." They returned home with a plan, sketching ideas for the garden, sunflowers for Emma, roses for their parents, a bench for reflection. Jessica felt the weight of the past easing, replaced by a vision of hope, rooted in the community they were building and the brother she was rediscovering. The morning air at Millfield Elementary was alive with the scent of freshly turned soil and blooming flowers. Jessica Harper stood in the school's courtyard, where the memorial garden was taking shape. Rows of sunflowers, roses, and lavender, chosen by the survivors and families, swayed gently in the breeze, their colors vibrant against the gray stone of a new bench inscribed with "In memory of the missing, in honor of the found." Timmy knelt nearby, planting a cluster of daisies, his hand steady as he worked the earth. Luna, the golden retriever therapy dog, lay beside him, her tail thumping softly. Jessica smiled, watching Timmy's focus. "You're a natural, Timmy," she said, handing him a trowel. "Dad would be proud." He glanced up, a shy grin breaking through. "Feels good to make something grow again." Emma, Michael, and Lisa joined them, along with community volunteers, their laughter and chatter filling the courtyard. Emma arranged sunflowers, her artist's eye ensuring balance, while Michael built a small trellis for climbing roses. Lisa, quieter but stronger, scattered seeds for wildflowers. Sarah coordinated volunteers, her clipboard a flurry of notes. The garden was more than a tribute, it was a living symbol of renewal binding the community together. Timmy's progress extended beyond the garden. He'd started a part-time job at Greenhaven Nursery, a local business with sprawling greenhouses filled with the earthy scent of potting soil and blooming plants. The owner, Mr. Callahan, had heard about Timmy's story and offered him a role tending plants, a task that suited his quiet nature. Luna accompanied him, her presence calming his nerves during busy shifts. On his first day, Jessica visited, finding him arranging ferns, his movements confident. "How's it going?" she asked, leaning against a greenhouse door. "It's nice," Timmy said, brushing dirt from his hands. "The plants don't judge you, and Luna keeps me grounded." He patted the dog's head, and she wagged her tail, nuzzling his leg. Jessica's heart lifted. The job was a small but significant step, a sign Timmy was reclaiming his life. She thought of their parents, who'd returned from their vacation to embrace Timmy, their tears mingling with joy. The family was knitting itself back together, one fragile thread at a time. Jessica's advocacy was also gaining momentum. Her petition had caught the attention of a national task force on missing children, and she was invited to a meeting in Portland. The conference room at the state capitol was sleek, with polished tables and windows overlooking the city. Jessica sat across from task force members, including Dr. Linda Carter, a child welfare expert, and Agent Mark Torres, an FBI specialist in trafficking cases. "Your work in Millfield inspired us," Dr. Carter said. "We're proposing a federal database for missing children, linking local agencies to streamline investigations. We'd like your input to shape it." Jessica's voice was firm but passionate. "Families need faster responses. A database could cut years off cases like ours. I'd also push for survivor support, counseling, job programs, community resources. Agent Torres nodded. We're impressed by your community model. Millfield Support Group could be a blueprint. Jessica left the meeting energized, her vision expanding. She shared the news with Sarah, who was thrilled. You're changing things, Jess, for all of us. The Memorial Gardens unveiling came on a crisp November afternoon, the courtyard packed with families, survivors, and community members. Sunflowers towered over the crowd, their golden petals catching the sunlight. A small plaque listed the names of the 28 children, with a note honoring the 4 who returned. Jessica stood beside Timmy, Sarah, and the other survivors, Luna weaving between them, her presence a quiet comfort. Ms. Anderson, the principal, spoke first. This garden is a testament to resilience and hope, built by those who never gave up. Timmy stepped forward, his hands trembling, but his voice steady. I was one of the kids taken. Planting this garden, it's like planting a piece of myself again. For those we lost, and for us who came back, thank you for believing in us. The crowd applauded, and Emma, Michael, and Lisa shared brief stories of their healing. Emma's art, Michael's carpentry, Lisa's book club. Jessica watched, tears in her eyes as the community embraced them. She thought of the class photo that started it all, now a symbol of truth and renewal, its weight lighter with each step forward. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Jessica and Timmy sat on the memorial bench, Luna curled at their feet. The garden glowed in the fading light, a patchwork of life amidst loss. Jessica's mind wandered to the years of searching, the pain of not knowing, and the purpose she'd found in helping others heal. We did this, Timmy, she said softly. For you, for them, for everyone still waiting. He nodded, his eyes on the daisies he'd planted. Feels like a start, like I can keep going. Jessica squeezed his hand, the warmth of the moment anchoring her. The garden was a beginning, a promise of growth, and she knew their journey, hers, Timmy's, the community's, was far from over. The woodworking shop at Millfield Community Center smelled of sawdust and varnish, its walls lined with tools and half-finished projects. Timmy Harper stood at a workbench, sanding a small birdhouse, his movements careful but assured. Michael, his fellow survivor, guided him, pointing out how to smooth the edges. Luna, the golden retriever therapy dog, lounged nearby, her eyes following Timmy's hands. Jessica watched from the doorway, her heart swelling at the sight of her brother finding joy in creation. "You're getting the hang of it," Michael said, clapping Timmy's shoulder. "That birdhouse is gonna be a beauty." Timmy smiled, a rare spark in his eyes. "It's for Jess. Something to say. Thanks." Jessica's throat tightened. The birdhouse, with its slanted roof and tiny perch, was more than wood and nails. It was a symbol of Timmy rebuilding himself, piece by piece. She nodded, unable to speak, and Luna wagged her tail, sensing the moment's weight. That afternoon, Jessica and Sarah met at the community center to plan the expansion of their support group into a regional network. The meeting room was bright, its walls now covered with Emma's vibrant sketches and photos from the memorial garden. They'd connected with survivor groups in Portland and Salem, sharing resources and strategies. Emma's art workshops had spread to nearby towns, her sunflowers inspiring others to create. Sarah scrolled through a tablet, showing emails from new members. "We're up to 10 groups," Sarah said, her eyes bright. "Emma's workshops are a hit. She's teaching in Eugene next week." Jessica grinned. "She's unstoppable. And it's helping Timmy, Michael, Lisa. Everyone's finding something to hold on to." The network's growth fueled Jessica's advocacy. Her work with Senator Nguyen had led to a national conference in Washington, D.C., where she'd been invited to speak. The conference hall was grand, with high ceilings and banners proclaiming justice for the missing. Jessica stood at the podium, facing advocates, law enforcement, and families, her voice steady, despite the weight of the moment. 25 years ago, my brother Timmy and his classmates vanished," she began. "We found 4, but 24 families still wait. Today, we're launching a federal database for missing children, linking agencies nationwide to ensure no case goes cold. This is for Millfield, for every town, for every family." The applause was thunderous, and Dr. Linda Carter from the National Task Force approached afterward. "Your story pushed this through, Jessica. The database is live, and we're training agencies next month." Jessica's chest swelled with pride, tempered by the ache for those still missing. She thought of the class photo, once a symbol of loss, now a beacon of change. Back in Millfield, she shared the news with the support group, who celebrated with hugs and tears. Emma presented her with a sketch of the memorial garden, a gift of gratitude. That evening, Jessica hosted a family dinner at her craftsman-style home, the dining room warm with the scent of roasted vegetables and fresh bread. Their parents, Ellen and Tom, sat across from Timmy, their faces glowing with cautious joy. Luna sprawled under the table, her tail thumping as she begged for scraps. The conversation flowed easily, a mix of old memories and new hopes. "Remember when you two tried to bake cookies and set off the smoke alarm?" Ellen said, laughing. "The kitchen was a mess." Timmy chuckled, his shoulders relaxed. "Jess blamed me, but she added too much flour." Jessica nudged him, grinning. "You were supposed to watch the timer." The laughter felt like a balm, knitting their family back together. After dinner, Timmy pulled Jessica aside, leading her to the porch where the stars glittered above. He handed her the birdhouse, its wood polished and painted with a tiny sunflower, a nod to Emma's influence. "For you," he said, his voice soft, "for not giving up." Jessica's eyes filled with tears as she traced the sunflower. "Timmy, it's perfect. You're amazing." He shrugged, but his smile was genuine. "I'm trying. You made it possible." They stood together, Luna at their feet, the birdhouse a small monument to their journey. Jessica thought of the years of searching, the pain, and the purpose she'd found. The database, the garden, the network, they were her legacy, but Timmy's presence was her heart. As they gazed at the stars, she felt a quiet certainty. They were healing, and they would keep fighting for those still lost. Spring sunlight bathed the memorial garden at Millfield Elementary, where vibrant sunflowers and roses bloomed around a stone bench, their petals swaying in a gentle breeze. Jessica Harper stood among the crowd, her heart full as she watched families and survivors gather for a ceremony marking 1 year since the garden's unveiling. Timmy stood beside her, taller now, his face softened by a quiet confidence. Luna, the golden retriever therapy dog, sat at his feet, her fur gleaming in the light, a constant companion in his journey. Timmy had transformed over the past year. At Green Haven Nursery, he'd become a valued employee, his skill with plants earning him a promotion to lead gardener. He'd moved into a small apartment in Millfield, a cozy space with potted plants on every windowsill and a corner for Luna's bed. His woodworking hobby flourished, with birdhouses and small sculptures filling his home, each piece a testament to his rebuilding. Jessica visited often, their bond stronger with each shared memory. "Looks like your daisies are stealing the show," Jessica said, nodding at the garden's bright blooms. Timmy grinned, a spark in his green eyes. "They're stubborn, like me." The Regional Survivor Network had grown into a beacon of hope. Emma's art workshops now reached 5 states, her vibrant landscapes inspiring survivors to reclaim their creativity. Michael taught carpentry classes at the community center, mentoring teens and adults alike. Lisa launched a mentorship program, pairing survivors with counselors to navigate reintegration. Sarah coordinated the network, her tireless energy uniting communities. At the ceremony, they stood together, their presence a testament to resilience. Jessica's advocacy had reshaped the landscape of missing children's cases. The federal database she'd championed, now fully operational, had led to a new rescue. A teenager found in Seattle, reunited with her family. Agent Torres called Jessica with the news, his voice warm with gratitude. "Your work made this possible," he said. "We're solving cases faster because of you." At the ceremony, Ms. Anderson, the principal, opened with a speech. "This garden honors the 28 children we lost and the 4 who returned. It's a symbol of hope, built by Jessica, Timmy, and our community." Emma spoke next, her voice steady. "Painting saved me. This garden, this network, it's our way of giving back." Michael and Lisa shared their stories, their words weaving a tapestry of survival and purpose. Timmy stepped forward, his hand steady. "I was gone for 25 years, he said, "but this place, these people, brought me back. We're planting new roots for us and for those still out there." The crowd's applause was warm, and Jessica's eyes glistened. She thought of the class photo that started her quest, now framed in her home beside Timmy's birdhouse. It was no longer a symbol of loss, but a reminder of what they'd reclaimed. After the ceremony, Jessica hosted a gathering at her home, the craftsman-style house alive with laughter and the scent of grilled vegetables and fresh bread. Their parents, Ellen and Tom, chatted with Sarah and the survivors, their pride evident. Luna wove through the crowd, stealing bits of food and earning smiles. The room felt like a family forged through shared pain and triumph. As the evening wound down, Jessica and Timmy stepped onto the porch, the night air cool and starry. Luna curled up beside them, her warmth a quiet anchor. Jessica held the birdhouse Timmy had made, its sunflower carving glowing in the moonlight. "We did it, Jess," Timmy said, his voice soft but sure. "You found me, and we built something bigger." Jessica's throat tightened. "You were always worth finding, and this, us, the garden, the network, it's our legacy." Timmy nodded, his gaze on the stars. "I used to think I'd never feel home again, but I do now, because of you." Jessica wrapped her arm around him, tears falling freely. The years of searching, the pain, the hope, they'd led to this moment, this family, this community. The memorial garden would bloom each spring, a living promise to never forget. And as she stood with Timmy, Luna at their side, Jessica felt a deep peace. They'd not only survived, but thrived, carrying the light of those still missing into a future they'd built together.